Courts of Thunder U.S. Open recap show. I'm Glenn. He's Greg. And we nailed this, Greg. We actually get to brag a little bit. We called this to a T, how the U.S. Open was going to go. We absolutely saw Emma Raducanu defeating Leylah Fernandez in the final when we started this show a couple weeks ago. We nailed it. We got it 100% correct. Congratulations to us for pulling that off.
No, I know there's some Courts of Thunder listeners out there that take what we say and they take it seriously. So if you had put Medvedev over Djokovic as the final before the tournament even started, you were doing well. Hell, if you put it on Medvedev the day the final was played, you did pretty well because Djokovic was still a big time heavy favorite in the final. Maybe not as big as you might expect. And we'll get into the reasons why. But it wasn't close. It was a whitewash. It was one of the more surprising Grand Slam finals in terms of its one-sidedness. Reminded me a lot of last year's French Open final between Novak and Nadal, where that was like a day everyone thought, ooh, this could be the year that Djokovic does it. And it ended up being like one close set and then a total blowout. And that's what this wasn't even one close set.
Nope.
Djokovic didn't show up.
Nope.
What happened, Glenn?
All right, let's start there. So, yes, we have a first-time Grand Slam champion. This was a moment that was coming. He's a guy that not only do we like, but we believed in and saw rising as a player. And if you'll go back, and I thought about going back and cutting up the audio, but it's available. Go back and listen to our U.S. Open preview. I don't need to do the work for you.
We've got other jobs, people.
Yeah, believe it. And it's football season.
I know. We'll get into that maybe at the end.
So we said, in looking at the draw, nobody was benefited more from the draw than Daniil Medvedev. Everything shaped out, and then it got even better as the event went on. And that takes nothing away from Daniil Medvedev, as you say regularly, Greg. This is how people become Grand Slam champions: is things shake out for them, and they take advantage of it, and they do the part they were supposed to do. And let's make that very clear. Daniil Medvedev was a rising, ascending player that had gotten here and fallen short, had shown signs that he was going to get there. We knew he was going to become a Grand Slam champion at some point. We just didn't know exactly when it was. But as you're watching Novak Djokovic get pushed to 5 sets by Zverev on Friday and not look completely right physically as that match went on, after watching, and I don't want to take anything away, Felix Auger-Aliassime was a very worthy semifinalist, is a very nice player, but he's not Zverev, not yet anyway. And so Medvedev in the afternoon on Friday gets to walk through that one, get damn near 48 hours after a fairly easy semifinal, prepare for the final on Sunday. You saw it, and I felt it on Friday. I certainly was not certain that Djokovic was going to beat Zverev. In fact, as you guys remember, I thought it was going to go the other way. I didn't think Djokovic was going to beat Zverev.
Yeah.
And boy, he tried. He tried, and then in that 5th set, locked it down. But Medvedev took advantage of that, and is a very, very worthy champion and a great story.
Look, he's 25 years old, so I'm not saying he's behind schedule. But he's also not like a next-gen rising player. He is the number 2 seed.
Yep.
And he was the 2 seed if Federer and Nadal, were in this draw. I know Federer hasn't played in a while, but my point is the amount of points that Medvedev had going into this tournament by, winning Cincinnati, by being a finalist in the Australian Open, by carrying finalist points or semifinalist points from last year's U.S. Open. He's the number 2 player in the world. And it's absolutely how Grand Slams are played. I think it started back in round 1, Holger Rune. Djokovic was not totally cold-blooded, ruthless Djokovic this whole tournament. First set, he lost to a guy who's getting the crowd going crazy.
Yep.
First set of the tournament. He lost the first set.
He lost the first set in seemingly every match, by the way. I
think it was 6 times.
Yeah.
No, it was 6. It was 6 times, 6 out of 7. And I give a little assist to every person that played Djokovic. I forget who he played in the second round, except for that one.
It was somebody named Greek Spore.
Greek Spore, not Greek Spore. I give it to Kei Nishikori.
Sure.
You know who actually played the longest match, any Djokovic match of the entire tournament? It was Kei Nishikori and Djokovic, because it was slow, it was ugly. It was a grinder type of match where long games, long points, that it actually was even longer than the Zverev match, or certainly the Berrettini one, just in terms of time played. The Brooksby match, I actually think if you just stack up all the types of players he had to go against, I just think it was a very hard road to make it all the way through feeling fresh. You got a good version of Kei that was at least willing to battle. You got Brooksby, who's the ultimate grinder and battler. You got Berrettini, who took a set. You have Zverev at his absolute peak going into the match. We'll get to Zverev. I just want to focus on Djokovic. And then you got to the second best player in the world, totally fresh. And Djokovic, I just don't think was 100% there physically. And I definitely don't think he was there 100% mentally this entire tournament. And that's why there's only been one Grand Slam.
Okay, now that's
player.
I'm going to push back a little. Okay,
it's hard.
I want to push back a little bit at what you just said. I don't think this was about Djokovic being overwhelmed by the moment, right? I don't think that's what this was. And I think it's easy to go there for some people, because this is who Novak Djokovic is. This what you saw. If you think that him smashing a racket on Sunday and
but he didn't play well. He
didn't play well. No,
he kind of choked.
I don't think
Medvedev had to play that well. The first, I did go back and try to watch, because it was obviously during football, but I didn't get this. I actually felt Medvedev was a little, was quite tight. These two guys were much more tight than Raducanu and Fernandez, because it's almost like they knew the moment.
I don't know. In that opening break, when Medvedev was down in that game and rallied back, I thought that was the peak of the Medvedev conundrum. Is so overwhelming, right? Like he doesn't actually play quite as big as his height, right? And
not at all. He stands 20 foot behind the baseline, and that's 6 foot. It's so weird.
and it's infuriating. He stands further back than Rafael Nadal does, right? Like he's
testing the bounds of tennis. You could not even. James Blake made the point. Like there are many courts in the world, especially not the pro courts, but even some pro courts where you literally can't play the way Medvedev plays, because there's a wall there.
And it felt early on like Djokovic, when Medvedev got that break, kind of could not figure out exactly what he was going to be able to do. And to me, it was not about I did not sense that it was about the Grand Slam thing. I sensed one thing. He couldn't solve Daniil Medvedev. He couldn't figure it out. He couldn't. And unlike other players the match absolutely turned when Djokovic had the love 40 lead in the early portion of the second set. And if he gets that break, I don't know, because then you got to start thinking about what that does to Daniil Medvedev, that Djokovic starts getting some momentum. But once you get to that point, the Andy Roddick line was what? First he takes your legs, then he takes your soul. And it was such a fitting thing to say about Novak Djokovic, because he's good. He's camping out. You do whatever you want to do in the first set. That's all well and good. He wants you. He wants you to push yourself in the early going of a match, because it's going to make it that much easier for him. But when that had no impact at all on Medvedev, and when Medvedev was dropping him as the match went on and saying, I'm cool. You want to do it to me? I'll come get it. I'm happy to come off the baseline. I can, in a couple of strides, get there. I got legs for days. You ain't taking my legs. And when Djokovic was getting dropped back, I thought Medvedev took his soul. I didn't think this was Djokovic being crushed. I think this was Daniil Medvedev having a confident plan. And again, as you point out, the beneficiary of all the tests that Djokovic had to go through throughout the course of the tournament, while he had a far easier path to get to this point and is far younger. And so the totality of a year's worth of playing tennis does not take as much as it. Djokovic, let's be honest about it, for being maybe the greatest hardcourt player of all time, Djokovic's recent history at the U.S. Open has not been great. He has struggled to win the U.S. Open because of the amount of tennis he tends to play during the course of the year, and now he's getting a little bit older.
That's all true, but I I do put something on winning the whole Grand Slam because of the rest of the tournament. Because I just never felt like he was at his best. Now maybe that's all the physical stuff leading in.
Well, in the
fact
fifth,
that
the
he
fifth set
tried to
against Zverev, he was. In the fifth set, he was brilliant.
right.
Yeah,
He was amazing. But I mean, like, giving away, against Kay, against Brooksby.
right.
There was against Holger Rune. Like, there was just a lot of sloppy tennis for him, and his post, match press conferences, his interviews, everything. I just don't doubt it was more about self. Like, can I actually do this in some sort of self pressure that he just wasn't playing his best. I mean, you can't say, like, look at him at Australia this year and then look at this. Although Australia was a weird tournament.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
lost a lot of sets this year.
Taylor Fritz, man.
But I think it's also like it's potentially like a mental fatigue of carrying all this, and it just is a reminder what a cruel sport it can be.
Well,
Because
there's no doubt about that, right?
Djokovic undoubtedly just had one of the great men's seasons of the last 25 30 years. I would put his, what was the other one, 20, it's so hard to keep track of years these with these guys. It was either 2011 or 2015 where he started out so fast, but either way, like, they're right there. And yet, what cruel endings he just had. The Olympics was brutal. I think that was a tough one to overcome. And he said after this match that he felt like the biggest winner in the world because it was so meaningful to him that the crowd finally got behind him.
I'm telling you, I think that hurt him. I think that hurt him.
That meant something so much to him. It was almost like a resignation. I really heard in some of these press conferences, he almost couldn't quite believe it. And during these matches, it was almost like you were waiting for the other guy to step up, but no one's good enough because Djokovic's C+ game is still better than everyone else in the draw, except for a fresh Medvedev. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So a couple of things to follow up with. One, I think that a lot of things you're alluding to also have a great deal to do with not playing since Tokyo. Like some of again, I'm not as convinced that you are that it was a mental thing as much as I just don't think he was sharp. He hadn't been tested. He hadn't played competitively from Tokyo. He did not get to play Cincinnati. I think that's
great.
Right. Correct.
For the most part.
Throw on that. I still don't really know where he was physically. He kept very quiet about the physical side of all of this, right? And because he was winning, it kind of didn't matter. But whatever happened in Tokyo, whatever the story was, whatever he came out of physically, he didn't play again. He didn't even bother to show up to Cincinnati, which is a tournament that he's been great, right? Like he won it in Cincinnati, won it again, obviously. I think there was more there that we didn't explore because the only story that mattered was this pursuit of winning a Grand Slam.
And 21, by the way. It's funny how
right.
becoming the all-time Grand Slam leader became a totally secondary story. And yet I find it fascinating that some of the records that they have in Grand Slam finals are almost identical between him, Federer, and Nadal now. I'm not saying we've made the case how Djokovic kind of has the numbers, but It's crazy. Him and Federer are tied in Grand Slam finals 31 and titles 20. So they're both 20 and 11. Nadal happens to be 20 and 8. The other two, Federer and Nadal, actually never lost to players outside the big three, or lost each one time to players outside the big three in the finals. And Djokovic has 5 of them, 2 to Murray, 2 to Wawrinka, 1 to Medvedev. It's just interesting when you slice it all up. But the most interesting numbers of all these is Medvedev's and Djokovic's career head-to-head record, because Medvedev came up during Djokovic's absolute peak, and the record is 5-4. Djokovic, now it's 5-4. That's amazing. That is why he's ahead of Tsitsipas and
Right.
Zverev to me, because Zverev's a pretender. You can say what you want about that fifth set. Zverev didn't show up. He just didn't believe. He's a punk and he's a pretender.
Well, if you want me to, if we want to sit here and do the F Zverev show, I'm happy to do it. I said to somebody who listens to
Medvedev is just, he's not going to be he's not going to be Federer or Djokovic in the end. He's not going to win 20 Grand Slams, but he's a real dude. He's going to win some Grand Slams, more than one, and he's never been afraid of these guys, and he's competed, and you keep making it back to this point like he did, you're going to get a lucky break a little bit with the draw and get to in a situation like this might happen, All
right, so let's unfold both sides of this, right? There's the Djokovic side, there's the Medvedev side, right? So let's stay on the Medvedev side for a second, okay? Because I use the term worthy champion not to try to take anything away when we have the Emma Raducanu conversation. I don't want to take anything away from that. I don't want to take anything away from
as worthy as possible.
that when we say the term worthy champion, I'll make a cross-sport comparison. In golf, if you're Steve Jones, a dude that literally I bumped into a bar one night and had to convince me that he was a U.S. Open champion, you still won the U.S. Open. You were a worthy champion of that event. There's a different thing to be said for someone who pushes along, and I guess the golf comparison would be John Rahm, right? Someone who won a bunch of tournaments, who worked their way up and ultimately broke through to finally win a major championship, right? Like, this to me is the term worthy champion. Everyone who wins is technically a worthy champion. They won the tournament, right? Like, that's the way that it goes. We can say whatever we want to say about Dominic Thiem the year before. He won the tournament. He was a worthy champion because he won the U.S. Open. They played a tournament. He won it. I'm elevating and using the term worthy champion with Daniil Medvedev because it goes a step further than that, which is this is a player who did everything along the path to becoming a major champion. This is someone who took every step, who went through the heartbreak, who learned from all of that and was eventually going to get there and got there. Medvedev was going to win likely multiple Grand Slam titles. Is he going to win 20? Of course not. Nobody, this is absurd. Is he going to win as many as Pete Sampras did? No. Is he going to win as many as Andre, he's already done that. Andre Agassi did. Probably not, but maybe, right? Like, there's
that would be my answer. Yeah. I hate having to do this. Yeah. Cause it's so hard to win one, but yeah, I would probably that's how I would answer. Agassi won what, 7 or 6?
Yeah, 8.
He won 8.
Yeah.
Then I would say probably not. But
probably not, right? But like he's gonna be a high level.
I feel
player.
like 4. Yeah, like 4 is a big number. Like if you can get to, it's like that's
4
a big number.
And he's in any generation, right? In any generation, you win 4 Grand Slams. You're one of the greatest players of all time. It's just.
Right.
Again, we have no context for this any longer because of what we've been watching for the last few years. Medvedev was always going to be that player. That moment was always going to come. And I still say the same thing. For all of the disappointment of Tsitsipas over the last few months, he is going to be a factor at the French Open, particularly for years to come. And he is almost certainly going to break through and finally win one. I think Berrettini is going to be a factor on grass for years to come. I think we'll see. And unfortunately, as much as I don't want to deal with it, Zverev is going to be a factor. It's going to be a thing that we're going to have to deal with that. I don't know how
they'll all get their chance. They'll all get their chance. But Medvedev, to me, is the best one. He's a very strange player.
Yep.
He's a very strange person. I mean,
but he's likable enough. Like, he's just
I find him extremely likable. I think he's smart.
Yep.
I think he's funny. I think he's self-aware. I mean, I think he's weird, making like FIFA,
and that's
FIFA
right. That's
references.
The thing. He's weird.
I mean, as someone who, like, I loved the 2018 Open when he went full heel.
Yep.
And when he said, and he just is telling the crowd to boo. I almost wish he just stayed in that mode, but it wasn't. That was just him in the moment. And then what we're seeing now, I think, is what he really is, and like, I almost wanted him to just stay as a heel. He's an amazing and weird player. And I think a sign of the sport, because it's these tall dudes who play defense. It's a very, it's taken a pretty surprising turn. If you like think back to like Pete Sampras and Greg Gruzetsky and, this time in tennis where I was like done with the men, that there's too much power. So now all of a sudden the big guys are back but the big guys are back with like big serves and defense. It's a little strange. It's a little strange.
This is even different.
That move extremely well. They're big. If you have a big serve and you move extremely well, just like athletes did not move. Athletes Medvedev's height did not move that way, and it's kind of opened up this avenue of how you can play. And a lot of the guys, Zverev and Djokovic, and even Tsitsipas and Medvedev especially, kind of have some similarities in that way.
But Medvedev is the wiriest, right? Like he's the one with the length. It's not just that he's tall, it's that he covers. Obviously he covers because of his quickness, but then he covers even more because he's got a wingspan, like he's got this incredible wingspan of what he can cover on top of it. And it is when some of those, I know you're down on how and where Djokovic was yesterday, but some of those points where they were just bombing back and forth, and we saw more of it from the Djokovic-Zverev match on Friday night, where some of those rallies were just, otherworldly that we were looking at. But even some of those yesterday, when you see him get a whip behind the ball and really strike it, taking it at the perfect point and knocking it back, you're like, yeah, this is something else. Like this is a completely different thing that I'm watching. It's almost robotic. I mean, it's impossible to think that human beings can do that type of stuff. So I'm in on Medvedev. I'm excited about it. I think he's going to be a factor to win a few more. And
he's a hard court guy. He's very much kind of like reminds me of Osaka in the way that Osaka will be good in Australia, have a good start to the season, then won't do much. And then it's almost like everyone forgets how good she is, and then she shows back up. Obviously that wasn't the case this year, but I'm saying the two times when she won back-to-back slams, you show back up, and that so far that's Medvedev doesn't have as big a decline on clay and grass, but there is a decline. US Open's been his best major by far. He's now won it, made a final, and made a semifinal in a row.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. Yep. And he made the finals in Australia and is going to be a contender there. I mean, he won he's won 4 Masters titles, which in this era is like, a big number as a 25-year-old. And he's got to make it deeper in the other 2. He hasn't even made a semi in the other 2 yet. So he's he just seems like he's going to get smarter and smarter as he gets older.
I agree.
And I think mentally he is better than the other guys.
I don't
disagree
with
player.
I don't disagree with that at all. And Greg, I know we talked about this before. I am convinced that we are more likely to see in the next 5 to 6 years a separation of. We're not going to go into every slam thinking every player has the exact same ability to win each slam. I think we're going to see more court-specific slam dominance in the coming years. I think that we're going to go into each tournament. We have been so thrown off, but outside of Nadal's utter dominance at the French, we have gone into all of the other 3 believing that these are the players, these are the only guys that can win these tournaments. And I think it's going to look more like it's looked in the past, where
I think it'll be like 5 or 6 guys who are most likely to win it, but there'll be more opportunities to have some big surprise.
And specifically guys that are particularly good on a certain surface. I think we are going to see that more and more in coming year.
But the 5 sets protects
a little bit of that. Yeah, sure.
The good guys. And so I do want to get into that discussion because I think, no, not the 5 or 3, but I just think what you saw in terms of the field helping to break Djokovic down is very much a function of 5 sets. I think Felix's semi run in some way is a function of 5 sets because Alcaraz was just done. Mm-hmm. There are just a few too many points in the men's tournament where it just feels like guys totally run out of gas or they're hurt. And so the other player wins, whether that's during a match or whether they literally retire like Alcaraz. And I think there's cases to be made plus and minus 5 sets, but that is part of the 5-set experience. Part of the idea of winning the tournament is very much outlasting the field. It's a little bit more of an endurance test than I usually want out of my sports.
I don't know, man. I can't.
You know
I can't.
mean?
I'm never gonna join you here. I'm never.
No. I know.
Join you
I'm
here.
just saying that's like it's part of the thing. Because
do I want players to retire? Of course
like,
not. I want them to be able to physically play during the tournament. But this is the nature of there's two different things at hand, right? Like there's protecting the TV show, which would be the biggest argument for going back to 3, right? Like we need to protect
like
Atta
like couldn't make it through that Berrettini match. He had a shot until Berrettini gets through. Felix, who you could almost like feel him getting bludgeoned by Medvedev coming, because winning that quarter where Alcaraz had to retire like meant a little too much. Like he was celebrating that, he was feeling great, and you feel good for him. But I kind of am thinking like, I don't trust this guy in the big moments yet. Still, like I just don't. I don't think he's.
Yeah, I mean that's where, that big of a moment, sure.
Right, he's just not ready for it. And like the semi felt like the win for him. Like even Alcaraz sort of got like the match he got through to get to Felix. The other guy who was playing this qualifier was done physically, and so he got through that match because of that. And yeah, there's a little too much of that. That's all. A little too much.
3-set Rosenthal over here. I want the slams to me. I want it to be that this is what tests you.
I get it, but it's like I watched a set and a half of this like Djokovic Brooksby match, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot we reserved the court with my kids. Oh, it's no problem. I'll be back like with an hour left of the match. Like I left like late in the second and came back like mid-4th or whatever. It's like it just keeps going.
I understand. All right, let's cover the Djokovic side of it quickly before we get over to the women. The Djokovic side to me is, it's a bummer because for him, it's almost impossible that he'll ever have the opportunity to do this again, right? There's just no world in which it's practical to think that he's going to win the first 3 slams of a year. Is there a world in which Nadal really is on the downside, won't be right physically ever again, and so that makes Paris possible? Yes, it does make Paris possible, but his rise in age versus the other players arriving at the same moment, I just don't think it's remotely plausible to think. I think this was his opportunity and the only one that he will have ever had. So with that aside, what does it mean? Not a whole lot to me. He's going to win a 21st. He's going to likely win more than that, right? Like the notion that this is the moment where everyone met Novak Djokovic, he wasn't right and he still made the final of this slam, right? Like at the end of the year.
It was the closest though to a torch pass moment that we've had.
I think it's a torch.
There hasn't been anything. I don't think it is passing the torch, but it is undoubtedly the first time a younger generation player
has
beat one of these guys at their absolute peak in this sort of spot. Don't tell me about Del Potro or certainly Wawrinka, because that was just like different. Those were different. Like those guys did beat him, and they were at their actual peak. I'm just saying, but it wasn't a younger generation guy. Well, it was their generation.
Right, that was the difficult part. Is that what Del Potro could, and the other part of it is that it didn't end up passing a torch. Like the Del Potro argument would be the eternal one, right? Like we'll talk about the Del Potro thing forever because I don't know what this era of tennis looks like if Juan Martín Del Potro can just stay healthy. I don't know how that changes.
But that, in hindsight, it turns out to be like one of the great accomplishments any tennis player had in the big 3 generation.
It is certainly elevated.
I think it's number 1.
Elevated him in a way. Like it really blew me away when I don't remember, was it Leylah who was talking about that? Like she was going on about what it meant to her to meet Juan Martín Del Potro. I'm like, wow, that's really cool to me. Like that's such a cool thing.
Well, yeah, especially for like South Americans, really, and
right.
Like it's. As he should. Man's a legend. Sorry, I totally distracted you. No, I just meant like it was nice because we've watched these guys now for 5+ years. I mean, Zverev's been around forever.
Yep.
He's been around even longer. He was winning Masters at like 18.
How long have we used the term next gen? We've been using the term next gen for a generation.
They're past that. So this was the first moment. I just wanted to say that.
And that's not nothing. And I want to make that. You're absolutely right. It's not nothing. To me, it's not it, but it's also not this. Who do you think is the favorite to win the Australian Open?
Well, you don't have to ask that.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, which doesn't mean that he's going to do it.
But I would take the field.
Okay, but that's not. Like, come on, man. Like, Novak Djokovic is the favorite to win the Australian Open, and that doesn't guarantee that he will. It does, but there's almost no doubt that, barring something crazy, Novak Djokovic is going to surpass 20, and that is as we said before, it doesn't really matter in this conversation because he has every measurable. Novak Djokovic,
it's a new challenge for him, though. Like, don't you think? I just think he put so much into this year. He's 34. It ended in heartbreaking fashion in the Olympics and here.
Sure.
Just heartbreaking. It wouldn't surprise me if he pulls the ripcord on the rest of the season, takes a break.
I don't know how he doesn't.
Maybe that's the right move. Like, but even skips the World Tour finals. We'll see. He's usually been pretty loyal about helping out the ATP. And
is he slated to play in the Laver Cup?
They still doing the Laver Cup?
Yeah,
I think he was slated. Yeah, it's in Boston. I just think it's a new challenge for him to come back and try to basically defend being number one in the world next year after what this year turned into be, which I just feel is draining. The last time he lost, a big after he won his other Nole Slam or his Nole Slam, he didn't win another Grand Slam for 2+ years. So
there was also 35. A lot going on in his personal life at that
Absolutely.
point.
I'm just saying it's like this is a new challenge. He's conquered every possible mental challenge, but this is a new one. And
by the way, he is not slated to play. He has not been announced for the Laver Cup. The Laver Cup team. Medvedev, Tsitsipas, Zverev, Rublev, Berrettini, and Ruud right now. And apparently there's one other spot that's available. I'm still going to bet that he wins one more at some point. I'm going to bet that he gets past 20.
Absolutely.
I'm going to bet that he finishes with more than everybody else. And I'm going to bet that he's not done just yet. This isn't a full passing of the torch moment in that, like, he's gone. He's out of the picture.
Although if you had talked to me on the day that Serena won her last slam, and then you talked to me today, and I was to set odds at those moments. Now, granted, I didn't know about the
the whole
right. But then, like her not winning another slam. I mean, she has made 4 finals?
Yes, correct.
It is way more shocking. In that moment, I don't even think it's close.
Yeah.
That, and it's just a reminder that winning slams is hard. So I'm with you. But like, if I just think bouncing back and the younger guys keep getting better. Defending number one, I think, through next year, like, is his next challenge, I'm sure. And I think that's going to be pretty tough. We'll see.
I think it's going to be tough, too. All right, let's hop to the other side of things. Courts of Thunder.
Oh, yeah. I'm off my game.
Kind of made me sad there. Football.
Then I'm like looking at my, the draw and my notes. And
look, I don't know what else to say. This is so unbelievable the way that this tournament played out on the women's side. I don't know. I don't have a strong take. I can't give you one. I love Emma Raducanu. I think she's amazing. Can I guarantee you that Emma Raducanu is going to win 4 or 5 more slams? Is going to be
Raducanu or Kanyu?
I've heard it both ways, so I have not. I'm sorry.
No, I don't know. I'm asking. Yeah. We need to figure this out.
We got a lot of British listeners.
I'm going
someone will tell. All right, fine. I'll go for the sake of conformity on this program. I'll go Kanyu as well. Can I guarantee that she's going to be a dominant force for 5 years? I can't. I don't. We don't have nearly enough to work with.
It doesn't matter though. Doesn't matter. Here's your hot take. I mean, that you can't play tennis any better than she just played it for 2 years.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Right.
You just can't.
Absolutely.
So that's all I need. That's all I need to know. Like, I read this article. Who was it by Matthew? Who made the argument that it's the greatest tournament anyone's ever played.
It's hard to argue that.
And it was sort of
a tiebreaker. She didn't go to a tiebreaker.
Oh wait, she didn't even go to 5 except for in the qualifiers.
One.
But that was in the qualifiers. That was in the qualifiers.
Okay, yeah.
It was 7. Some other I don't know the name off the top of my head was ahead of her 5-4 30 love, I think, in the qualifiers in one of those sets. And Raducanu ended up winning 7-5. She did not go to 5 in any of her matches. I mean, in theory, like, she got some breaks. It definitely wasn't the hardest road ever. But she also beat Sorribes Tormo 0-1.
Yep.
And that was as dominant a pro performance as I've ever seen from anyone. And Sorribes Tormo was playing really, really well. Like, she took the ball out of her hands. Rogers didn't quite show up, but then
Bencic
took care of Bencic. Don't think Bencic played her best match. The Sakari matches where I was like, oh my
right, right.
because Sakari was playing so well and it just didn't matter. And I really think that final was about as good as a 6-4, 6-3 final could be. They both came out playing fantastic. The points were terrific. I thought Fernandez was mentally really tough to stay in a lot of those games and the match when Raducanu ultimately was just better firepower, better than everyone in the draw. And they played some beautiful points. So that's where I'm talking about, like where I find the women's game so beautiful and why I love women's tennis so much right now. That was an hour and a half match. I was satisfied. That was like a beautiful short movie that you left the theater and it was like 85, 90 minutes. And you were like, that was awesome. You don't need it. You didn't need any more than that. And I love that they both played like just nails tennis. They were going for it and it was great to see.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I agree. She was incredible. I'm such a fan of hers. I think she's unbelievable to go from where she went. And we talked about this in the middle of the week. And I got called out by a couple people because I said I didn't think she could beat Bencic. She did. But I was loving watching. I thought it was so awesome just that she had at that age been able to
made you some money, so that helps you.
She did. That did help too. To be able to go through what she went through, right? To be able to go through all of that at Wimbledon with all of the eyeballs on her and to come through it and not just to be okay, but to be this. It's like, where do we even start? The fact that she's the first British woman to win in forever. It's like the fifth thing that you think about on the list of amazing things that unfolded here.
She's going to be so rich. She's going to, be such a star in the UK and they're going to have to handle that. And it's hard enough to win your first Grand Slam and just be able to handle that. So, I think what Chris Everett was saying on the broadcast about like hopes, these women have people around them protecting them is right. Cause the only other comparison just for the tennis of it all was Ostapenko's run at the US Open. I mean, at the French Open.
Okay.
Now they play very different, but just in terms of absolutely steamrolling the field out of nowhere,
right?
And no one was competitive against you, and you would have never seen it coming. Now Ostapenko had been around for a little while longer before that, like a lot longer, but she was still, a player not in the top, I don't think 50 at the time, and she just steamrolled everyone, and it's turned out to be like a magical 2 weeks. Now, when you look at Raducanu's game, there's nothing in it that feels fluky. It just feels like she's like really good at tennis and didn't have the opportunity because of an injury in her juniors and deciding not to play too much to play pro tennis, and that her tennis is just good enough to go quarters champion Wimbledon US Open. Now, The mental side of it is going to be another thing, but she can't look any better mentally than she did in this tournament.
I try to say this is why it's like, how do I take it moving forward? I don't know what would have happened if she had met Ash Barty in the first weekend of the U.S. Open. I don't know. It's easy to say, well, if you're playing like this, you would have just beat anybody. And if Ash Barty, played the way that she played against Shelby Rogers, she would have won, right? Like, it's easy to say that. I'm just saying openly, I don't know. I don't know if Emma Raducanu is really the greatest player in the world moving forward, or
no,
she's a player who
you
had
can't say that.
A really unbelievable couple of weeks in New York, and I don't know where we go from here. I just don't have any clue. It doesn't change anything about how unreal this was. And I hope in saying these things, no one thinks that I'm trying to take away from her. This was magical. This was one of the greatest stories to me in all of sports in the last decade. If everything was created equal, if in this country we cared about each sport evenly, this would go down as one of the greatest sports stories we've ever seen. I just don't know what it means moving forward. I don't have a clue.
And I almost think it doesn't matter. She's a new character for an incredibly compelling set of characters on the women's tour. And she's going to bring a lot of juice to any draws that she enters this fall or winter and whatever it is. And you don't need to know what it is moving forward. I mean, I just think this final too is like, again, another example of like what's crazy about about this women's game that here's a woman, she's 18 who's born to, what is it, a Romanian father,
Yeah, let me
a
make sure.
Chinese mother, a Romanian father, born in Canada, plays for Great Britain. And there's so many examples of that. Leylah Fernandez, also born in Canada, to a father who was a professional soccer player, who is Ecuadorian, and her mother is Filipino, and she plays for Canada. And it's just like, that's women's tennis. That's sort of the world now too. On some level, it's certainly a more like, the borders are a little more, what's the word? Porous, like just in terms of like nationality, ethnicity, everything is more mixed up than it was 50 years ago because
of course, right,
because of travel, because of politics,
and we've seen this
because of everything. But there's no sport, soccer certainly has this too, but that I think represents it any better than tennis. And that's why like Raducanu has a lot of fans, like Romanian fans too, and Fernandez has had like Filipino fans and stuff, and it was just like, it was awesome. I don't think we can get to Fernandez if you want separately, but to me, like, her run was one of the great runs anyone's ever had, and she didn't win the tournament.
Correct.
But I don't think that can take away from what she did. The matches in a row. First of all, her first two matches were pretty tough. Kanju and Kanepi. Kanepi's taken people out. Kanju has had a great year, has a lot of talent. Those are her first two matches. That's tough to get through. If you're like the number 3 seed and those were your first two matches, you were like, ooh, you got a tough draw for your first 2 rounds.
Yep.
And you got through it. Then to be in order, Osaka, Kerber, who was 17-2 going into that match, Osaka, the defending champion, Svitolina in one of the there's so many matches of the tournament on the women's side, but that was one of them because I think they both played great. And then Sabalenka.
And after Sabalenka won,
someone go through every WTA draw of the entire season and show me a better 4 wins in a row. And what I'll say, you're not going to find it. You're not, and in the most entertaining way possible too.
In watching that Sabalenka match, when Sabalenka won the second set, I said to myself, okay, well, it's over now, right? Like, now it's over, and it's been a wonderful run. And in a weird way, it means something more to me that Fernandez had to come back after dropping a set and face adversity. And that, I know, I don't want to try to make it pretend like she was the real champion. She lost. She lost the match to Raducanu. I want to make that very clear. But in some bizarro world, I think that was the most impressive thing that I saw from anybody in this tournament.
Right. I mean, she lost a set to Svitolina. She was down a set and a break to Osaka.
Yep.
I'm trying to think the other match. I can't remember off the top of my head like what the score situation was, but Svitolina was 7-5 in the third set tiebreaker, and she lost the second set there too. So it's just like, I was on the other hand when it went to the third set against Sabalenka, I was like, oh, I trust Leylah Fernandez. Like,
I mean, I get it.
I would vote for her for president. Sure. Like, I think she could solve world hunger, and I thought she was going to take it all the way. And then after the match, after Raducanu wins, it's like everyone's like, well, of course, Fernandez lost. She played 5 more hours. She had to go through all this or that. And it's like, I guess, I don't know, because at that point, she seemed to have enough energy and everything in that final. I mean, she was playing her heart out, and I was at the point where it's like, she can do anything, and I thought she would win that match, and I was wrong. But like, I was at the point where I thought if she can do all that, then she can win one more against Raducanu. But she just wasn't good enough. Raducanu was just a better player. I like it when that happens, where it's just sort of clear one is better than the other on this day.
I too thought that Fernandez was going to win the match, and I'm grateful because I intended to spend some money on it, but literally forgot to before the match began.
You took like a long-term one on Raducanu somehow.
I did.
In the quarters, from the quarters on or something.
Yep. I took a little something, just a little something. It worked out all right for me in that way. Although I had
love Leylah Fernandez.
I had a couple of months ago put something down too on Osaka on a future, so it just kind of helped.
But that was the thing, that Fernandez Osaka match made me a Fernandez fan, and now I will be a Fernandez fan,
no doubt,
moving forward. And
I'm a fan of both.
We have a lot
ladies.
of. I'm a fan of both these ladies, but some of the UK listeners were asking, "You're not tweeting about it." Well, first of all, it's just I didn't feel like I'm watching with my family. I'm just enjoying. Sometimes you don't want to be on your phone and stuff. But it also was partly because in my heart, I love this girl Fernandez.
Yeah.
I really like the run.
I get that.
But I love Raducanu is amazing too. They're both amazing.
So who's the player of the year in the WTA?
It's Barty. Oh, it's Barty. I don't think it's even close. Right? No, I don't think it's that close.
Okay. All right.
Because who else would it be?
Well, I mean, if she just won a slam, it would have been Sabalenka. Like that would have been the reality because she didn't win a slam.
She didn't make a final even.
Yeah,
I mean, she had a great year, and she will almost certainly finish the year ranked number 2, which is an incredible accomplishment. Heck, she's got a chance. You never know where the rest of the year goes. She could finish at number 1.
She could.
It's possible, but no. Barty's won 5 titles. She won Australia. She won Cincinnati. I mean, she won Wimbledon. Sorry, I'm blanking here. She won Cincinnati. Yeah, she did enough. She did enough.
I agree. All right, I agree. All right. Anything else? What else since the last time we did a show that we didn't get to cover that we should cover? When we were talking about Djokovic, we didn't talk about. I am still convinced that as much as he might say it was nice to have the crowd behind him, it's the same thing I'll say about the Olympics. I think he needs the negative energy. I think he is so used to it. He has dealt with it for so long. I think it hurts him when there isn't the negative energy.
You're
no,
crazy.
dude.
He was begging for it, and I held off tweeting something that all it took for the crowd to root for Djokovic was playing against the domestic abuser. That's what because I thought for a second maybe they're just cheering against Zverev, but then I realized no, not enough people are really aware. They haven't checked out the slate match, because when Zverev was making some great plays and in that 4th set and everything, they backed Zverev too, so they weren't really
winning over the crowd is part of what works for him to get that edge. I think when he has to call for cheers, when he had to
beg for it against Berrettini. I mean, you're a 20-time Grand Slam champion. Have some self-respect.
I disagree. I think it's part of him.
They like the handsome man.
He's quite handsome. There's no question about that. He's a very handsome man, but I think it's part of his thing that he has to win them over by doing the sublime, by doing the spectacular, and then telling them, now what? This is who I am. I think it's part of what makes him tick, what gets him to that next level. And when it's not there, what we saw a year ago when everything was empty, when he lost his mind in New York, what we saw in Tokyo when it was empty, I don't think he served well by not going through that process. I think it's part of what has made him so great is this edge that he gets from winning over the crowd and they're trying to say, you can hate me all you want.
He never really does win him over, though. I guess he did fully, here. But that's the thing that was sad about it, was when he said that it was he feels like a champion because of the support that he finally had and that it meant so much. I was like, bro, they didn't even support you that much.
Right.
They were still kind of into Zverev winning that 4th set in a way they never would have.
Yeah,
but in
the third set of the final, when Medvedev could not get it, when they were boisterous, when he had a serve into the net, when it was just anything that made them believe that Djokovic still had a chance, it was pretty.
They wanted to see history, and they wanted to see another couple sets.
Yes, correct. That was part of it.
You said any final random thoughts? It does cross my mind. What is Alina Svitolina and Karolina Pliskova thinking as they watch this final? Because you say these, Medvedev kind of took the steps. These are top 10 women now for 5 or more years, and it's just a reminder. There is no it's nice to hear that you take the steps, but there's also no guarantee, and they're starting to get women like them are starting to get a little past where it doesn't feel like they have quite the complete game or maybe quite the big enough weapons when it's Svitolina, and it's you start wondering does your window start to close? So it is really interesting with those types of standouts for a long time. It's just a deep women's tour now. Halep's, when she's back, she had a nice tournament. Sabalenka, I think, should feel different. She had a year. She came into this year, everyone's saying she couldn't play at the Grand Slams, and you know what? She played pretty well in Australia, lost to Serena in a really good match, and then she goes, semi Wimbledon, semi U.S. Open. I think she's kind of like the Medvedev. She's younger too. She's like what 22 or something.
Right, but she doesn't have an eternity. But she should feel right now.
She does. She's 22. I mean, she's like 3 years younger than Medvedev. I'm saying she's building those steps, and I don't have much doubt she's going to break through. Because of the amount of her weapons.
I agree.
The other two, I definitely have doubts of like, will it ever break open for them? And you gotta, if you're them, you gotta be thinking, God damn.
Yeah, like what do you have to do? What do you have to do? These 18-year-old kids coming along and winning. What do we have to do in order to win one? I'm with you.
And one last shout out is just to Maria Sakkari. What a value add that she is. The match against who was it?
Oh, the quarter. Oh God.
No, Pliskova, but the match before that against the Andreescu match.
Oh,
I know
that was the one.
I said there was like a lot of matches in the tournament, and that was the one during our pod. To go from that to that Pliskova match, like she's just a value add, and wow, what a likable
she's awesome.
Woman
she's awesome. Well, I'm the biggest Maria Sakkari fan.
I know, but this is the tournament where I finally was like, God dang, she's a great value add.
Yeah, I appreciate all of you that said very kind things about the effort that we put in to get a mid-tournament show up. It was a lot of great feedback about that, and we pushed it. We pushed it, and we dragged it out.
Yeah, let's hit the thing one more time.
I love hitting the sounder.
Courts of Thunder.
Thank you.
That I'm transitioning to like, okay, where are we at with Courts of Thunder now moving forward? Because this was fun, but it was tricky during, I feel like in a perfect world, I would do all these like short shows during the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open should be our peak. And yet, football was taking me away, and your daily show and football is taking you away. And where are we looking at the end of our first Courts of Thunder?
I could not tell you the feedback has really given me such a lift to want to do more of this show, This was definitely an experiment where we're like, all right, let's get through this year, and then let's sort of sit down and see if it's worth doing. And part of that was going to be, do we have the economics to make it worth doing? That really was like part of the conversation. Now, part of that is on honestly, it's on me. I wanted to spend some of the summer locking that up.
No, don't even worry. Don't even worry about that. I mean,
but right now I had so much fun doing this show, and you guys were so kind. The silly thing where Greg was like, if you got to the end of the show, tweet us, and the number of tweets that we got from people who were like, yeah, I made it to the end of the show. Absolutely. When you're already watching all of the tennis and then adding in another hour's worth of tennis content that you're taking in from us, that means enough to make me want to figure out a way. And what that looks like, we got to figure that out, obviously, and that'll be Greg and I will spend some more time with that.
Yeah, we're probably shutting it down though for the rest of the season.
I would like to, since you're going to Indian Wells, I would like to do something around then, just because you're going to be out there. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
If we can do a surprise we might do a surprise pop-up show then, or
and if there's
maybe the World Tour Finals, which kind of gets overlooked.
And if there's some massive news story.
The thing that gets to me though is I wish the Australian Open wasn't like,
oh, it's really terrible
football season, because it really is one of my favorite sporting events in the world. But this is how it's like, we're as a fan, it's like you get to this part of the season and you're tired, but when those Australian Open matches start at like 10 p.m., back in January, right, I'm sure I'll be all the way back in and want to be doing some Courts of Thunder. So it is up to us to set it up, because if we're not making money, I think like my family might kill me for some reason. Like, this is the step too far. This is when they hear me honking about this, they're like, what are you doing? You don't have enough time for the actual work you do, much less
adding in
family. Right. So what are you doing here?
We're not what we're saying is we're not making promises. We're not doing that. We're making no promises, but we're inclined. I had been asked by a couple of people that have enjoyed the show if we would go the Patreon route, and I said, I'm not saying no. I just don't like that route because it feels, I don't know. To me, it still feels a little tawdry. I didn't want to do that with my own show at one point.
I wouldn't care about the tawdry part. My thing is, I want a chance to grow this show if we're going to keep doing it.
And that's not the way that you go about it.
It limits your chance to
100%
to grow.
So
someday when we're the biggest tennis podcast in the world or something,
Yeah, sure. We'll think about that then. Look, we are leaving it on the table. We are not shutting it down. We are not saying, hey, we had fun, but it's over. We're just saying we got to deal with the reality of it. And if you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, like if you are the friend of a company that's invested in tennis and other ways, my DMs for sure are open. Greg's a very popular man.
I got some ideas.
We will explore that in the coming months. But the point that I'm trying to make, Greg, I want to do the show. I want to do it.
I do too. And I love the sport, and I love the idea of spreading that love of the sport. And for anyone that has followed it, like a little extra, or you're a UK fan that now you got Raducanu, because we heard from a lot of you.
Yep.
Man, there's no better way to follow tennis than just to pick one player and follow that player, because you learn about the tour writ large through that player, that you really don't need to follow much else, because now you're going to start seeing, in a normal year, she'd be going to Asia. This year, we'll see what she wants to do with, this Indian Wells. She'll probably be at Indian Wells, she
has to be at Indian Wells.
Just unless she wanted to take time off, it doesn't really make sense.
She's 18. What are you taking time off for?
I know, but it's a lot to deal with. It's one of the things I like about when you win the US Open is there's no other Grand Slam for 4 months. And I always thought that's nice. Like, you can just kind of sit on that. I always feel bad for the French champion that gets the whiplash and has to be playing in another Grand Slam. I know there's more tournaments in between, but it's a little more. It's a little more chill.
You do typically see, this is also like exhibition season. This is where you see, like, again, we didn't know who Emma Raducanu was. For the majority of the world didn't know who she was just a couple of months ago. Now you see her sign on to play some event at Madison Square Garden in November.
Right. But there will be Masters Series, events coming up, and like those tournaments matter. They matter for points. They matter for rankings. They matter for like building you up for next year. I think about Sabalenka. I think about Raducanu. Like sometimes like players just go on. Like I think about Andy Murray essentially ending his career by playing every single week in a death-defying try to get the #1 ranking by the end of the year, playing every single week throughout the fall. That's how he got that, and then it was never the same after that. But you know what? He got to that ranking. Like the fall tournaments, if you've got
he got the host Saturday Night Live. He got that.
The fall matters, and it's. I like that it's sort of downshifts in terms of intensity, but it's still fun. So if you've gotten into it, just follow your fave and see what happens.
All right, we will at some point. I will make this one promise. This will not be the final Courts of Thunder. Whatever, I can't promise what it means. But this will not be the last one. Thank you all for being on board with us. It has truly lifted me and made me want to do more. And Greg, thank you to you, because this was just a silly idea that I tossed out at you at one point, knowing how busy a man you are, knowing all the things you have going on in the world. I said, this is going to sound crazy, but what do you think about doing something like this? And it's not just that you were like, oh, I'll listen to that. You ran. I was
just like, that's a great idea.
You were so excited about it.
It's like, why didn't I think of that? Good idea, Glenn.
I was so like, wow, I was nervous. So that's awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Me too. I mean, if my argument to my family will be like, it's one less hour that I'll talk to you about.
It's true, right? You get it all out right now.
Your time better. All right, buddy.
All right, for Greg, I'm Glenn. Thank you to all of you. This has been Courts of Thunder.
Courts of Thunder.